Hi, everybody. Um, all right, so my name is Jean Boucher. Thanks, Maggie. That was nice, and thanks, Bennett. I'm playing cleanup on the talks here. So this was the question I was playing with: how politics can help or hinder efforts to react to the threat of climate change. I consider myself an activist, academic, or scholar activist, or whatever. I'm an environmental sociologist. And I'm also working locally with some groups here. Let's see. So that's my answer. We will just stop there. Yes, politics building again on Maggie can help and hinder, but the question is how. Um, so I'm going to be provocative here. I like being provocative. It's a little bit idiosyncratic, my talk. I kind of bounce around and cherry pick, do what I want. It'll be sociological. And is it helpful? I'm not sure. I get, you could probably tell I'm from the United States, so it might be, in that space. And my critique of my own talk is a little bit too microscopic, which means it's a little bit too much about individuals. And because I think sometimes we show up and we wonder what we can do. So this is just a sort of a basic definition of what politics are. You probably could figure that out. And I do like the sort of the bottom sort of thing, looking at forms of power relations among individuals, such as the distribution of resources and status. Let's see, get rid of this thing out of here. Yeah, and so it's a book study. So let's do a little bit of some science here. This is from 1912. This is an article from New Zealand, and it's talking about all these emissions of all this coal that's burning. But the bottom line, it says this tends to make the air a more effective blanket for the Earth and to raise its temperature. So they didn't actually use the metaphor of greenhouse gases at that time yet. They were calling it a blanket. But this is 100 years ago. And this is not a scientific consensus like we say we need scientific consensus, but people have been sort of noting this kind of stuff. And I'm just going to run through a few. 1896, there was a scientist in Sweden saying, hey, he's sort of building again on there's this CO2 thing problem. In 1965, I don't know how many people know this, Lyndon Johnson actually got a letter from a bunch of the top scientists saying, hey, we're messing up the earth, we're messing up the climate, something ought to be done about it. In the 1980s, Exxon and Shell had some of the top climate scientists and research groups. They dismantled those and they started a disinformation campaign. And now it's misinformation, and they still go on, and they even admit that they're greenwashing, and there's almost no shame in this. In 1988, the IPCC, so International Panel on Climate Change, started up. So we have some politics, some things happening. And in the early 1990s, a bunch of Nordic countries started carbon taxes. And that's 30 years ago now. Were all countries doing this? No, but some countries were. I don't know who knows about the Keeling curve. So the Keeling curve is a measure of CO2 in Mauna Loa. It's one of the islands in the Pacific. And the reason you do it in the Pacific in the middle of nowhere is because you're not getting effects from cities, and you're not getting, so it's trying to get a real clear measure. And you can see this has been going on since 1950 or 60. I don't have my glasses. And then here it is. And then here we go. We got a Rio summit here. We got the COP3 in Kyoto here. We got the Copenhagen COP15. We got Paris. Remember Paris? I celebrate Paris. Paris was a historical event, but is it making an effect? And then we have COP25 up here. This curve is not being affected by the politics. All right. It's small little detail there. So when I got my master's degree, I took a political science class, and I asked my professor, what is political science? And this is it, right? It's the study of power. And how does power work, and how does it relate to us, and how do we engage in it, right? I don't know if you know these two guys. This is Michel Foucault and Jean-Paul Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre started existentialism, and he had this idea of thrownness. We've been thrown into the world. We didn't ask to be here. We've been thrown into the world. And now are we going to become agents? Am I going to be responsible for my thrownness, my being here? And how do I do that? Power is productive. So if you're going to see it doing stuff, You're gonna want to be able to measure this stuff, and it can go. And power for Foucault is everywhere. We all have power. So we're either power, we're even allowing things to happen, or we're pushing back, or I think that's kind of clear. So if I have this power, why don't I act? So there's a couple of things here. Game theory and prisoner's dilemma. I actually don't really completely like these things, but what it is about, it's like my individual costs are outweighing the social good here. Why should I ride my bike to work when nobody else is doing it? Why should I stop flying when nobody else is doing it? The costs on me are not enough. I'm just a little minuscule person. Why should I do something when it's not going to have a big impact on everything else? There's vested interests in the way things are. The way, actually, the flying doesn't really, there's no real taxes on flying. I don't know if you ever noticed, you don't have a tax on your ticket, right? And there's vested interests in the way things are. It's about money, how the things are unfolding for us. This is Pierre Bourdieu. He's one of my heroes, French sociologist. He did this work and called Fields as Fields, and we're actors within fields. I have a certain habitus, which is a reproduction of my habits. We are both products and reproducers of culture, right? I'm a product of my culture, and I produce my culture at the same time. So it's sort of this cat chasing his tail. It's a cause-effect loop. And I was born, again, I was thrown into this thing. I didn't ask for this. And how am I going to do something different if I can? So there's just a lot of inertia here. There's a lot of inertia in the, I can build on Bennett's term, energy modernity, right? A lot of inertia in rebuilding that thing. And so we call it in sociology social reproduction, not sexual reproduction, but it's social reproduction, which is my kids are going to be like me, and I'm kind of not too far from my father, my parents, and this kind of thing. All right, we're going to sing. Richard asked me to do a song here. You ready? I woke up, fell out of bed, dragged my comb across my head. Help me out here. Found my way downstairs and drank a cup. Looking up, I noticed I was late. Found my coat, grabbed my hat, made the bus in seconds flat. I can't hear you. Found my way upstairs and had a smoke. And somebody spoke and I went into a dream. Oh, oh. Is the Matrix, baby. We're living in this dream world and we reproduce it, and I don't know how to get out. I got channeled into this mundane life, and how am I going to break out of it? There's not a lot of opportunities for us. I'm still waiting for a bike lane down Union Street, right? I mean, I know it's coming. We've been fighting I know it's been decades fighting for this stuff. So my dissertation, I studied people's attitudes about the climate and how it was affecting their lifestyles, and not very much, hate to tell you. What happened though is income was dominating my models, which means that people don't really follow their values as much as how much money do I have, right? So money becomes a temptation to do things, to fly places, to buy, another car, to have big things. So one of the people I interviewed said, we consume to our income. I really like that. So my means, it's not my values that what determine my life, it's my means and my capabilities and my capacities to do particular things that become sort of a temptation. The GDP CO2 connection has been so tight for so many years. Some people talk about it's decoupling now, but I'm really suspect of that. We sort of export things to China. China's like the workshop of the world. And we sort of, we say we're cleaning up, but our products are still made over there. And what I resulted from this thought is studying this stuff is when we're productive as humanity, we tend to trash the planet. And that is what has to change, which makes me think maybe we need to be less productive. You heard of degrowth, or maybe you heard of a 4-day work week, these types of things. But there's also arguments that we need to be, back to the land. In some ways, we need to work harder if we're going to make up for fossil fuel energies, because fossil fuel energies do so much for us. It's unimaginable how much they do for us. Okay, I get this thing here. So, did you ever take a class on how to be a citizen? Ever take a class on how to protest, how to organize? The system doesn't really want to teach us that, right? There's something called the hidden curriculum. And what you do is you learn how to plug into the workplace. Working class people have working class kids. They go to working class schools. They make working class. They get married to working class. They reproduce and these kinds of things. I learned how to raise my hand. I have to answer. I answer when I call to. I learned how to obey. This stuff here about hierarchies. I was born into a hierarchy. My family was a hierarchy. I got a job. It was a hierarchy. All these institutions are hierarchy. I don't even know how to operate. Oh, what do you mean? I don't have a boss? How do I get along with people? How do I organize? How do we talk? I mean, these things are completely lacking culturally, and we sort of need to step up and sort of start learning these things. I'm an organizer and I'm an activist. I had to learn that stuff, and it was hard. It was very scary the first time I was holding up a sign. What do people think of me? But sort of at the time, everybody was doing it, and this is what often happens. It's a social kind of event. Thank you. Jonathan Russell's here tonight. Isn't that amazing? The only war we should be fighting is the war against climate change. When Russia, yeah, stand up, Jonathan. No, sorry. When Russia and Ukraine war broke out, I was so depressed. I was just sort of like, we don't have time for this as a species. This is regressive. This is going backwards. It takes energy to build buildings. It takes energy to build bombs, and then you drop bombs on buildings, and then you got to rebuild the building. I mean, it is high reptilian behavior. I mean, in my mind. So the geopolitics has to get fixed. I don't see how we're going to fight climate change, and it's not up to any of us to decide we're not going to go to war or something. But I think all of this stuff needs, and this had to get pounded into my head, because I thought sort of like the climate change, all this kind of stuff. But if we still running the war machine, that's a problem. So we have a lot of things with political stuff that needs to get cleaned up. There was a book I helped co-author, and in the ending, I did an epilogue, and I kind of sort of recoined this sociology of disruption. And I'll just talk a little bit about that. Anthony Giddens, I think he's Lord Giddens now, actually, here in the UK. He talked about the juggernaut of modernity. So if we build on Bennett's the idea of energy modernity, this whole mass of this energy and all these things that are needed, Giddens called it this juggernaut. And it's just like, we're on this train and we don't know how to get off the darn thing, right? And then Giddens also came up with his own paradox. He said that we're not going to do anything about climate change until it's too late, because we don't really act until things are concretely in our faces. And it's it's kind of a little bit doom and gloom here, but I guess this is a little bit of my soapbox. Andrew Size is also, I talk about him in this epilogue. He had this idea of the inverted quarantine. So let's say DuPont Chemicals is up the street from my house and they're dumping waste into the river, right? So what you really want to do is you want to quarantine DuPont Chemical. You want to take them and you want to quarantine them away from the rest of the society. But what really happens? 4 of my siblings have reverse osmosis water filtration systems because they don't trust the water in the United States. So these things are $1,000 a shot, these reverse osmosis systems. It cleans your water really well. Poor people can't afford that stuff. So this is the inverted quarantine. Make the people clean their own water rather than, holding DuPont chemical. Make the people do the recycling rather than have corporations, produce stuff. Make the people track their own nutrition. Make them read labels and make them decide what's good food and not food. And the air we breathe, right? I mean, this is all this stuff. The atmosphere is one of the biggest dumping grounds we've ever had. I mean, corporations just keep dumping, and they're not being charged for this stuff. So where is my power in all this? I love Frederick Douglass. Late in his life, somebody came up and asked him, as a young Negro, just starting out in the world, what should I focus on? And Frederick Douglass said, agitate, agitate, agitate. I mean, that's what he learned. And what I came up with this in this sort of epilogue that I wrote was disrupt, disrupt, disrupt. It's pretty much the same thing as agitate. wherever I am, even though I'm in this juggernaut, if I'm CEO or a dishwasher or a homemaker or wherever I am, how can I disrupt where I am? And it's very hard to live an alternative life outside of an alternative community. So we need to organize somehow, or we need to get with people to do this kind of thing. We're not, very difficult to be a solo actor. There's no real solo actors. I mean, you could talk about Greta, and she's been amazing. I don't think she ever imagined where she's going. But even still, now she's organizing, she's getting together, she's being arrested with groups of people. And this is, I hate to say it, kind of the stuff we need to be doing. So I don't know. Politics can hinder, politics can help, and power is everywhere, and we need to get involved. I'm going to stop there, but Friends of St. Fitty Park, I got some flyers. We had a little bit of a win last week because we had some lawyers working for us saying the city council and the energy transition zone. The energy transition zone should not be an excuse to take land from poor people and turn their park into some industrial zone, right? Where's our creativity? I have a friend, he works in decolonizing the imaginary. Our imaginations have been colonized. We don't even know how to think creatively. We need to force these corporations to have environmental justice initiative. They need to be socially responsible. And anyway, I'll leave some of these up here if you want to grab some.